Before we get going, I would just like to address something, and that is that this episode had a very obvious metaphor for a real world issue in it. And the whole show has had this one, but I feel like to really talk about this episode, I do need to bring it up. And in fact, I think most of the Yu-Gi-Oh shows have had things from the real world implemented into their stories in one way, shape, or form. However, the issue with this is, as far as I'm concerned, that people will often use any opportunity they can to just springboard into their own political or views on a topic, and that is not what we're here for. Because this was an obvious message in the show, I do need to address it, but I do not want anyone to go on to a crazy rant about how they feel about said topic. That's not what we're here for. We're just here to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! So without any further ado, let's get started. So, yeah, this week's Yu-Gi-Oh! 7's Go Rush, episode 19. Yeah, there's no way about it. This episode directly talks about a lot of the issues facing refugees and the government's handling of it. Now, this has been pretty obvious since the start of the show, as this is an issue not just America is currently dealing with, but Japan actually is also dealing with the same issues of refugees. Rather, it goes into simply how to help sustain this new population, people's issues of xenophobia, the incoming people's ability to adapt to a new surrounding and culture. All of this has been a theme present from this show so far and will most likely continue into the future. I personally believe they're actually doing a pretty good job with it. Like, this episode I thought was a really interesting satire on government and how government is choosing to handle it. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has obviously taken the stance here of government's general incompetence is the problem with the world right now. And yeah, it's pretty obvious there's a lot to that. I mean, again, the whole point of, say, Shin Godzilla was to show the incompetence of government and also just the ego of government. Like that feeling of everything we do is right, everything we do is correct, but they're so separated from general public and society that it just ends up leading to problems, and that's what you had here. So yeah, this was a very Manabu driven episode, which I like. I actually really like this guy. I kind of think this was a really good, interesting way to take his character. Up till now, he's been the stickler for the rules, and I think showing that, no, he does care. He does want to do what's right, even if that means sometimes he's got to be tough or he's got to do things that to some might not always seem ethically pleasing, i.e. just sort of shoving all these people down into this somewhat glorified but still kind of crummy looking refugee camp. And here all of a sudden you have his boss coming in being like, get rid of them, detain them, fuck them, fuck their society. We're in charge, we know what's right, but we really don't. And I think using the way they used dueling as a metaphor for that in this episode was actually kind of interesting, because the whole like advertising for this episode leading was Manabu's gotta face a girl who's never lost a duel before in her life. Also, kawaii. We'll get back to that. And essentially what you kind of find is that the reason she's never lost a duel before is because she's surrounded by people who just try to kiss her ass and therefore feed into her ego. She only wins because she, well, has the power to basically make you just give her the win. Whereas Manabu has been out in the world. He's met other people. He's had to actually, quote unquote, duel people and grow from that. And because of that, he is able to sympathize and understand the plights of those around him and therefore wants to stand for it. And also this in turn reflects how he is then the better duelist. You also have the aspect to this thing of the woman only uses cute things. But let's ask the question, what does cuteness in this context actually mean? You see, a lot of times, cute is a metaphor, at least for a lot of people, for the concept of something that's perfect, something that is untainted, something that's nice to look at, nice to think about, but hasn't really been polluted by the outside world. Similar to the ideals held by many people in power of their desire for this ideal world and society. Some of you may be thinking I'm making a stretch by that being the metaphor, but I kind of can't help but feel like that if they weren't going to have it mean something that she likes cute monsters, they would have just given her like robots or tough cops or what Yu-Gi-Oh! Usually likes to give characters like this. But no, I feel like specifically the idea of she just wanted cute, perfect perfect things, regardless of what that meant for her or anybody else, I think kind of means something. And that is what I feel came out here today. As for the rest of the episode, you do have a lot of really funny stuff here. I do kind of like the idea that the prologue talks about how our heroes got stuck having to duel all these random weird aliens and how we don't see that. But it's kind of funny because the insinuation is they probably all just went like with the Nostradamus guy, just like take him out, move on, take him out, move on. A lot of Yu-Gi-Ohs would have made us sat through that, and I'm kind of glad we didn't because it would have gotten very old very quickly. But I like that this episode also still highlights things like, say, Yuamu's intelligence. I like the idea she just scares him by going, Yugioh, I-beam power, no! That was really funny how they then ducked for cover and then our guys just ran, which led to the stadium, which allowed for Yuamu to actually take advantage of the people. Okay, that meant wrong. Basically what I mean is that she then proceeded to let everyone know what was going to happen and therefore start rallying them up, which then allowed for the situation to turn into a duel, which we already talked about. And yeah, I quite liked it. Also, I like the idea that the cat now has a little extra history to her. I think it's just kind of neat learning, oh no, she had a partner before this who wound up being, racist. And therefore she then moved on to Manabu. I think that's just a nice little character beat. I also did think it was funny how the woman was just like, I thought the only reason you talked was because I was the only one who could hear you. Just a fucking idiot. But it is kind of funny. Well, let's see, was there anything else? Oh yeah, then of course Manabu wins the duel. His new card is cool. Although I do find it funny how a lot of times in Yu-Gi-Oh animes, the rivals tend to play somewhat straightforward beatdown decks, and the hero uses a lot of overtly complicated cards. But here it's weirdly the opposite. A lot of Yugioh's cards are vanilla monsters and things with very simple, straightforward effects, and Manabu is the one who has these weirdly complicated cards. I don't think it means anything, but it does seem to be just a weird thing I noticed. Also, I think it's funny he essentially just gets a really powerful MST in this episode, which would be very easy to use with Rush Duel mechanics. Then, of course, as everyone moves on, also I like the little detail of Yuhi and Manabu kind of like arguing and yelling at each other. Sort of like Joey and Kaiba, just like, it makes sense for these characters to have a relationship to the protagonist, but give them their all little interconnected dialogue, i.e. just being like, what do you want, rubber gloves? And then just the two of them not liking each other. Really neat little thing, considering I think they've done a good job establishing Yugioh does not dislike Manabu, and Manabu does not dislike Yugioh. Good way to get that kind of humor in. And then, of course, the episode ends with them finding the next key to finding the missing Goha girl. Is that the missing Goha girl? Probably not, because she says Sama, although this is Yu-Gi-Oh! So the idea of a character being a narcissist who worships herself is kind of on course. But yeah, no. Look, while a lot of people I imagine might find it awkward that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is definitely leaning very heavy into a current issue, I think, for me personally, it is handling it very well and in a way that is entertaining and done in a way where if you don't personally see it or want to care, I don't think you have to. But yeah, that's my thoughts on this week's episode. Now let's get to the real serious controversy, the TCG question of the week. Holy Jesus fuck, what is going on with Power of the Elements? Between the tier limit field spell and Splight Blue, literally, I checked several times today because I wanted to build Splight. I think it's a fun deck. But no! I've literally looked 5 times today, and each time the thing radically goes from having one listing for 70 all the way up to 100, and it just changes every hour. This is fucking insane. And I'm looking at the regional coverage, and yes, this is a very powerful deck that did a lot of fucking damage right out the gate this weekend, and that's cool. But like $300 for a playset of a card for this one archetype. In my head, I personally can almost justify paying $100 for like Pot of Prosperities or 50s a copy for Lightning Storms, or things that like you can in theory use forever in multiple decks. For me, like $90 for an archetypal Stratos is not okay. This is fucking lunacy. If you bought the cards, good for you. I hope you have a good time and you don't regret the purchase, and you shouldn't. It's your money, as I said last week. Use it how you want, but come on, people. This is fucking ridiculous. Oh yeah, just give me your thoughts about that. I know that really wasn't a question, but you get the point. Tell me that in the comment section below. And as always, click to like, click to subscribe, and join me next time as hopefully we get a few more answers as to what is going on with the Goha girl.